Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Enrico Lopez-Yañez. I am the principal pops conductor of your Pacific Symphony. We are so excited to have you all here this evening for another Cocktails with the Conductor. This is one of our series. Thank you. To give you a little insight into the performance and some of the performers that you'll be seeing on stage. And tonight we have an extremely special guest with us, a member of the band, but well beyond that, a legendary bass player who has recorded and toured with so many artists, including James Taylor, Phil Collins, Jackson Browne, of course, Lyle Lovett, and so many, many others. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Leland Sklar.
Thank you so much.
It's such a pleasure to have you here with us.
I think this is fabulous. I've just been so enamored with the actual architecture of this building and the whole complex in this area. But I live up in Pasadena, and I was really not aware of this, so this is the first time I've played here, and I am beyond thrilled that we get to be here tonight.
We're so excited to have you. So, Leland, for those of our audience members who are not familiar with all your work, of course, I mean, you've recorded not hundreds, literally thousands of sessions with artists from all different genres and decades. Can you walk us through a little brief recap of some of the highlights of your career and sort of how that all came to be?
Well, in 1970, I met James Taylor, and his gig was just starting at that point, and we ended up playing at the Troubadour, which became an iconic venue for artists breaking there, like Elton John. His first big American gigs were at the Troubadour. And we played there, and I assumed it was going to be like a one-off thing, and it turned into 54 years. So you never quite know, but that kind of just opened things up for me in terms of recording and touring. And I started out as a classical pianist when I was a child. So I was very fortunate when studio work opened up for me that I was a strong reader. So it allowed me to do things beyond just, the kind of recording sessions that everybody's doing. I was doing television and movies and commercials, and it's been a wonderful adventure all this time, and it's allowed me to work with an incredible variety of artists. And we're right in the middle of a new Barbra Streisand album right now, and we're out with Lyle. We just finished doing a cruise in the Bahamas, and our band, The Immediate Family, had been on a cruise the week before that, and we've got a documentary movie out now about us, and a new album just came out. So lots of stuff going on. The hair's getting less and grayer all the time, but we're still working.
That's incredible. So correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were with James Taylor, first getting started, this is sort of when the whole name of the section came to be, and you all started regularly becoming the session players for the recording scene. Can you talk us through sort of that transformation of, because I mean, previously session players weren't even listed on records. I mean, they were not, they were just playing but not really recognized as a musician. Can you tell us about that transformation in the recording studio and your
Well, the thing that happened there, I don't know if anybody's seen the movie The Wrecking Crew, but it's a remarkable documentary that Denny Tedesco did about the musicians of the 1960s in Los Angeles. And his father, Tommy Tedesco, was like one of the greatest studio guitar players ever. But during that period, they never got credit on albums. So people were listening to the Tijuana Brass, Frank Sinatra, the Mamas and the Papas, and didn't realize it was the same musicians playing on all those records. When we kind of took the baton from them, because it was a very different scene that was starting in '70, the first producer that we worked with James Taylor was his producer manager, Peter Asher of Peter and Gordon, who we are so blessed is here tonight with us, and he's going to be performing with us tonight. He insisted that our names appear on the album with James, and that was a real game changer. So when they saw the success of James, the singer-songwriter movement's beginning, and the labels started signing all kinds of singer-songwriters, they would look at James Taylor's album and kind of see our names on it and go, well, if they're good enough for that guy, let's hire them. And we really went from having almost no studio experience at all to being the first call guys overnight and having to kind of learn our trade on the job. And you know, knock on wood, it's still going, it's strong. So I kind of pinch myself every day. But Denny Tedesco has now done a documentary film about our band, which is Russ Kunkel and Danny Korchmar and Waddy Wachtel and myself and Steve Postel, called The Immediate Family. And that's been on all the film festivals, and now it's on the streaming platforms. And the Blu-ray of it just came out today, which I'm really dying to see because it's got 3 extra hours of interviews and stuff. So it's gonna be fun. But it's been a remarkable journey, and I love. I'm so thrilled everybody's here for Lyle tonight. I've been with Lyle since 1988, and every time we get a chance to do a symphonic performance, it's really special. So this is going to be great to be able to work with you tonight.
Thank you. Likewise.
And tomorrow.
Yeah, and tomorrow. That's right. Yeah. So, how were you first introduced to Lyle? Where did that connection come into play?
Jimmy Bowen, who is a great producer down in Nashville. When he lived in Los Angeles, I used to work with him on projects here, like Anthony Newley and Sammy Davis Jr. And he was married at that time to Keely Smith. And, it was an interesting little thing that was going on in LA, but he got an opportunity to move down to Nashville and took over Capitol, I believe. And so when Lyle was going in to do his large band album, Jimmy said, because he was planning on using the musicians he had been working with in Phoenix, and Jimmy said, well, look, would you like to try working with some of my guys? Because I was going back and forth to Nashville on a regular basis doing projects at that point. And it was so great because I'm in the studio and I didn't know Lyle at that point, and all of a sudden this guy comes in with his hair piled up, and the first song we did was Here I Am, and I'm sitting here waiting for a song to start, and the first thing out of his mouth is, well, I'm the guy that sits next to you and reads the newspaper, and I'm kind of going, I'm in for a surprise here. This is gonna, and I love Lyle. Did Road to Ensenada and Joshua Judge's Ruth and a bunch of his albums with him, and he's still one of the truly most unique and creative artists I've ever worked with. So I really value our friendship and our music.
It's amazing. Well, and I imagine he keeps you on your toes too, because Lyle finds his way to fuse so many different genres, as you will all hear tonight. It's not just country, it's blues, it's influenced by jazz and folk song and all these other styles. As a bass player in his band, what does that call upon you to be able to do in terms of your musical flexibility?
Be on your toes. Now, it's fascinating with him. You know, every time we get in the studio or go on the road, I just, it's fabulous. It's just one of those things that everything he does to me is so interesting. And I've worked with a lot of artists over the years, and he really sits way up on the top of the pantheon of unique artists that I've worked with and special artists. So this is thrilling. That's going to be so much fun to play for all of you tonight.
Can you tell us a little bit about the recording process? Because, you know, as a session player, you are not part of the original, maybe creative process of a song when it's going through the songwriter's head, but once it reaches the studio, then you very much are. I mean, you're influencing what ends up on that record. Where does that artistry come into play in terms of what you're allowed to shape in your bass lines and what you're creating versus what the artist is bringing to you and saying, this is exactly what I want?
It runs the whole gamut of that. A lot of times when we get in the studio, the artist will have really done a lot of pre-production and a lot of thought, and they'll have their ideas that they want to have. And it's your, not an obligation, but it's really what you do is you try to fulfill that. But then a lot of times you'll say, could you give me one more take and let me try something else? And there's times where they go, you just made the song, or they go, I really love what I already had. So you know, I always say that everything I do is etched in mud, you know, so I'm willing to change whatever they want. But the process that takes place in the studio is really one of the most remarkable experiences. When James Taylor would come in, he would just sit and play his guitar and sing a song, and then it was our job to come up with our parts, you know, the bass, the drums, the guitars, keyboards, and all that. And it's one of those things that when the juices are flowing in there, there's nothing else that compares. And I just love every day when I get to go in the studio. And then having the opportunity to work in jazz and funk and hip hop and country and classics. It really keeps you fresh because you're constantly having to kind of rejuice and stuff rather than being stuck in one idiom.
Right.
So.
Right. Now you mentioned something that was really interesting, which is there are songs that stand out in your mind where you really did get to influence the sound and is there a particular song or a couple of songs that you feel like when you recorded, you had the ability to shape that line and became sort of a staple for that song that stands out to you of like, oh yeah, that made the song?
Yeah, well, it does happen. The only time that it isn't that is if you were to ask for payment. But like Jackson Brown's Dr. My Eyes, the bass part on that is really kind of defined that song, or Your Smiling Face with James Taylor, or Stratus with Billy Cobham. There's times where a lot of what I do, I try to figure out how little I can contribute to a song and still have it stand, because I don't want to be standing out and being forefront on it. So you try to find the parts that really support everything, and then have maybe a moment where you can toss a little nugget in there so people go, I knew that was you on the record, I heard that lick.
Right.
But it's not all about your chops and in your facility. It's really, most of the guys I've worked with, especially the guys who are here tonight, are songsmiths. And our lives have really been built around really songs. So you really try to find, each time you play a song, what the best part is. When I would work with like Linda Ronstadt and Aaron Neville and stuff, you're just supporting it because you really want those vocals to shine on it. Just listen to the music that they play here. It's really beautiful.
So you've mentioned so many different artists that you've worked with, and you've gone on tour with many of them too. I mean, of course, James Taylor and Phil Collins and things. What are some of the uniquenesses that you've found working with Lyle on tour compared to those other artists?
Well, I think the thing that's so fascinating to me about Lyle is that he puts together so many different varieties of tours, where it can be just Lyle on stage, it can be like as soon as this is over, we're continuing in California for the rest of the month, and there's only 4 of us in Lyle on that. Yet as soon as June comes, it's the large band, so we're back with 15 members of the band out there. And then he'll do like singer-songwriter things with like he and Joe Ely, or and John Hyatt. So with him, you're always, and each one of those requires different songs. So our playlist is pretty massive of the amount of material we have to know for Lyle.
Yeah.
It's not a one-trick pony kind of a thing, but it's what keeps you excited and alive. So it's really good. We're not doing some of the other stuff that I did, like, because the fun stuff I get to do is like I did It's Raining Men and I Am Woman with Helen Reddy and all this kind of thing. So maybe I'll get Lyle to do a couple of those.
There you go. Now, tonight is something that Lyle doesn't do very often, which is play live with orchestra. I mean, he's of course done a few with Kansas City and several other locations, but this is sort of a unique version of his show. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that's like for you as players on stage, collaborating with another 80 people behind you? That's the extended large band.
It's thrilling. Because I grew up in classical music, and I've done a lot of film scores and played with orchestras. So to be sitting there and feeling the energy of the numbers behind you as soon as they hit something, it kind of still gives me goosebumps every time. And it's a slightly different group of songs that we do for this that have really been arranged and stuff. So people that have been to other Lyle concerts, like with the large band and stuff, they're going to hear some other material tonight that they wouldn't necessarily hear on that situation. And it's fun because it keeps everything really fresh.
Have you done a lot of orchestra work with other artists as well, beyond Lyle?
Some. I spent many years with a French artist named Véronique Sanson. And the last time we toured, we had a 48-piece orchestra from Prague, because we only toured in France and Belgium with her. And it was fantastic with them. And Paul Buckmaster did all the arrangements for that tour and stuff. So occasionally we get to do that. It's not that often, and I wish there was more opportunities for it, because it really brings such another dimension to the artist's music when you really have beautiful arrangements done for you. And we did about 4 orchestral dates last summer, and at Red Rocks in Kansas City and in Washington, D.C. And it was fantastic. And I'm sitting there, and the show we did then opened with Billy the Kid, Copeland.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just sitting there listening to one of my favorite pieces of music, and you're kind of almost forgetting to play because you're
Right.
just kind of dreaming and drifting off. So
Sure.
it's great.
So at this stage in your career, are there any things left on your bucket list?
Everything.
Everything. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I mean, I've been doing this now daily almost for 54 years, and it gets better every day. So, it's like I said, we're right in the middle of this new Streisand album. As soon as we hit the road, I've got 2 albums I'm doing in the hotel rooms that people are sending me files, and I just finished a project for a heavy metal guy in Italy. So it's every day. To me, being a working musician is still the most thrilling thing I can imagine, beyond the fact that I'm getting a new puppy when I get back from this.
Oh, that's
this
great.
tour.
Congratulations.
Yeah, my boys are getting a nephew.
Oh,
So
very, very sweet. Well,
It's
I don't
great.
want to take too much of your time. Of course, we have to
it's
prep
great.
for the show and stuff. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Leland Sklar, our fantastic bass player for tonight's show. And we want to thank you so much. And again, check out the new documentary, Immediate Family, that's available for streaming everywhere to hear all about the legendary artists that you all have worked with and recorded with and just made that sound that so many of us
Well,
have
also,
listened
if
to.
anybody wants to, I've got a YouTube channel that I do every day, and there's over 1,600 videos on it, all about songs and artists and stuff. So there's a lot of information if you find it interesting. Come join us just under my name, Leland Sklar.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here
So
with us. We hope you all enjoyed tonight's concert, and we'll see you at intermission.
Have a ball.